Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the evening twilight of June 25, 2019, the normally placid streets of Harrison Lane were rattled by sirens piercing the dusk. Neighbors stepped onto their porches, their hearts quickening as they squinted through the gathering shadows. A common scene in this quiet residential community. As the flashing lights flickered through the trees, a sense of foreboding settled over the neighborhood, like a heavy fog, signaling that something darker lurked beneath the surface. Detective Sarah Jennings arrived on the scene, her brow furrowing as she took in the chaos. Yellow crime scene tape flapped gently in the warm summer breeze, marking a perimeter around a modest two-story home that had always seemed ordinary. Tonight, however, it was transformed into the center of a storm, an emblem of tragedy cloaked in normalcy. Inside the lifeless body of Lisa Montgomery, a 32-year-old mother of two, lay sprawled across the living room floor. The vibrant life once contained within these walls had been snuffed out abruptly, leaving behind echoes of laughter, the scent of her favorite vanilla candle, and a single disturbing question. Why? As the forensic team began their meticulous examination, Jennings' mind raced. Hours later, in the quiet hum of her car, she replayed the scene in her head. Lisa's husband, Mark, had been found unconscious but unharmed in the bathroom. A cocktail of prescription medications beside him. A troubling juxtaposition unfolded. Was it an accident, or was it a calculated act? Overwhelmed by uncertainty, Jennings knew one thing: this was only the beginning of a much larger, twisted narrative. The victim. Lisa Montgomery was known in Harrison Lane as the quintessential neighbor. Her laughter resonated on summer evenings, reverberating through the community like a comforting melody. The mother of two little girls, ages 5 and 7, Lisa radiated warmth that extended beyond her modest home. She personalized every interaction, remembered birthdays, went off and organized play dates without a second thought. To most, she was the beating heart of the neighborhood. However, behind that inviting facade lay a tumultuous reality. Friends and family would later reveal that the world perceived as perfect was an illusion. Lisa struggled with anxiety and depression, battles she fought primarily in silence, yearning for normalcy even as her mind waged war. Unbeknownst to her neighbors, her marriage to Mark had begun to fracture under the weight of unspoken resentments and financial burden. The couple, once inseparable dreamers, found themselves suffocating in a haze of unmet expectations and concealed grievances. Yet, amidst this emotional tempest, Lisa maintained a semblance of control. On the surface, she was the doting mother, dutiful wife, meticulously organizing her children's lives. Only those closest to her occasionally glimpsed her vulnerabilities, often dismissing them as fleeting moments of fatigue or stress. As Detective Jennings delved deeper into Lisa's life, she uncovered a history of entangled relationships. Text messages to friends expressed her struggles, cries for help wrapped in laughter, a tapestry of life woven with strands of despair. One message, sent only days before her death, read, "Some days feel heavier than others." To Jennings, each of these nuances painted a clearer picture of a vibrant but ultimately wounded spirit, leaving her pondering. Who could harbor a motive so dark as to extinguish that light? The crime scene. The living room of the Montgomery home held a disquieting stillness as Detective Jennings crossed the threshold, the air thick with a sense of abandonment. In stark contrast to the usual chaos of family life, the room lay eerily quiet, sunlight filtering through partially drawn curtains, illuminating dust motes that danced like ghostly apparitions. The tidy arrangement of plush furniture and vibrant family photographs seemed to scream normalcy, yet the stark reality of tragedy loomed just below the surface. The forensic team moved with precision, their faces set in grim determination, methodically documenting every detail. Jennings observed the body of Lisa Montgomery, a heart-wrenching sight. She lay on her side, hair splayed across the hardwood floor like a dark halo, a stark reminder of her lost vitality. The medical examiner, Dr. Collins, was busy at work, noting the lack of defensive wounds on her body, which suggested an element of surprise had played a role in her death. Yet it was the detail of her surroundings that captured Jennings' attention. A coffee table had been overturned, framed photos scattered like fallen leaves. One picture, a wedding portrait capturing Mark and Lisa at their happiest, glared back at her, accentuating the juxtaposition of love and tragedy. The scent of Vanilla Lisa's favorite fragrance lingered faintly in the air, a cruel reminder of the home that once resonated with joy. The evidence was sparse, yet a shattered glass lay at her feet, liquid pooling around it like a metaphor for the life spiraling out of control. Lifting her pen, Jennings noted the signs of a struggle, a misplaced rug, an open bottle of pills on the bathroom counter perhaps, a desperate plea, or a chilling invitation to despair. The scene was unfolding like a twisted puzzle, and as she knelt to examine the details further, Jennings felt an unsettling certainty. The answers lay buried here, tangled amongst the remnants of a life once fulfilling that now lay extinguished. The early investigation. The hours following the initial chaos were a blur of activity, each moment marked by urgency as Detective Jennings and her team attempted to piece together the horrific puzzle of Lisa Montgomery's death. The sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the investigative tableau that had transformed the Montgomery home into a scene of professional scrutiny and quiet anguish. First on the agenda was questioning Mark Montgomery. Sullen and disoriented, he sat in a sterile interrogation room, his eyes red-rimmed and hollow. Jennings could see the weight of his world pressing down on him. Though he remained physically unharmed, the emotional toll was palpable. A mixture of confusion and grief clouded his expression as he struggled to recount the events of that fateful evening. "I don't remember much," he stammered, running a shaking hand through his disheveled hair. I was just trying to escape, I guess. I took the pills to sleep." His admission hung in the air like a haunting specter. Forgiveness slipped further from his grasp with each passing word. As Jennings probed deeper, she noted the inconsistencies. Mark claimed he'd left for a quick shower, yet witnesses had reported a louder-than-normal argument emanating from the house an hour before the tragedy unfolded. With Mark's account beginning to fray at the edges, Jennings turned her attention to a web of contacts surrounding Lisa. Friends, family, and acquaintances were interrogated, their stories weaving together a portrait of a dynamic woman whose facade masked the trials of her existence. Strangely, details began converging around one particular name, Sarah Events. A former friend whose falling out with Lisa had left lingering animosity. Jealousy can be a powerful motivator, a close friend remarked, suggesting the potential for hidden resentments that grew undetected. Jennings made a note. Connections heightened the stakes of her investigation. But as she gathered these threads, she felt an unsettling truth rising there. Delicate balance between empathy for the grieving and the relentless march toward justice. Every interview added weight, and the depth of deception loomed like an ever-present specter, urging her to dig deeper into a world she had yet to fully understand. The dead ends. Days bled into nights, each passing hour laden with the heavy burden of unanswered questions. Detective Jennings sat at her cluttered desk, surrounded by a mosaic of evidence, witness accounts, and photographs of a life torn asunder. Yet as she sifted through the material, the pieces refused to fit neatly into any cohesive narrative. Frustration mounted, gnawing at her resolve like a relentless tide, eroding a shoreline. Interviews with Lisa's friends bore only whispers of vague feelings, punctuated by heartbreak, but devoid of substance. Sarah Events, the name that had echoed ominously through previous conversations, turned out to be a dead end. She was now living out of state, claiming she hadn't spoken to Lisa in well over a year and had no ill will toward her. The once promising thread unraveled into an empty knot of missed connections and silence. The more Jennings uncovered, the more elusive the truth became. Interrogating Mark Montgomery again, Jennings sensed the anxiety beneath his placid demeanor. Each time, his account wavered slightly. More unaccounted hours blended into a shadowy mystery. He remained insistent that he bore no responsibility for Lisa's death. Yet his unconcealed irritation underscored a man on the brink of exhaustion, grappling with a storm of grief and guilt. Then there was Lisa's online life. Jennings ventured into her social media accounts and messages, painting a complex picture of a woman yearning for validation. But hopes of finding solace in these digital breadcrumbs fell flat. Most threads surfaced self-doubt. Relationships were fading rather than flourishing. Disappointed, she couldn't help but notice a single thread from a year earlier, hinting at a confrontation with an anonymous figure, but leading nowhere. As more interviews produced scant leads, Jennings caught herself staring into the proverbial abyss of worst-case scenarios. What if this case was never solved? Would Lisa's children grow up knowing only fragments of their mother's story? Uncertainty clawed at her as she pondered the knowledge that no one had left definitive footprints behind. With each passing day, this case wrapped itself in layers of obscurity, and the burden of finding a resolution began to feel as heavy as the questions that danced incessantly in her mind. A break in the case. It was a damp morning when Detective Jennings received a call that would breathe new life into her weary investigation. Her phone buzzed on the desk, disrupting the haze of paperwork that surrounded her. It was Officer Reyes, a new recruit, who had stumbled upon an overlooked report from an unrelated incident nearby. "Jen, I think you'll want to see this," he said, his voice tinged with excitement. The report detailed a disturbance at a community park just a week before Lisa Montgomery's death. An anonymous caller had alerted the police about a heated argument between two women, one of whom bore an uncanny resemblance to Lisa. The other woman was noted to have been very animated, shouting accusations that remained unclear. The caller had described the interaction as intense enough to draw a small crowd, but the officers who responded hadn't documented personal details. Instead, they had focused on disbanding the gathering. With renewed vigor, Jennings quickly coordinated with Reyes to track down any potential witnesses who had been present. The sun broke through the clouds as they canvassed the park, determination surging between them. A group of teenagers hanging near the picnic tables recalled the incident vividly. Fascinated by the confrontation between the two women, they identified Lisa and mentioned a woman they didn't know. Someone who had been increasingly aggressive. Her anger simmering over unresolved issues. Something about jealousy, one of the teens mentioned as Jennings pressed them for more specifics. They were yelling at each other about choice-like stuff that didn't seem to make sense. That single word jealous cycled to Jennings like static electricity, sparking a flare of hope. It mirrored whispers she'd gathered from Lisa's friends, hinting at deeper tensions. By the end of the day, they had managed to track down one of the women who had witnessed the argument, a local resident who had observed the confrontation unfold, but had thought little of it at the time. Yet as her heart raced at the thought of new leads, Jennings knew that it was only a tantalizing glimpse of potential answers. The specter of doubt still loomed large, but now there was a pathway emerging, and she felt the fracture of the case beginning to mend. As the pieces fell eagerly into place, hope ignited within her fragile flame. In the darkness of uncertainty, perhaps, justice for Lisa Montgomery was within reach. The suspect, with the witness testimony from the park weighing heavily on her mind, Detective Jennings knelt to examine a revelation that had shifted the dynamics of the investigation. The name Anna Miles surfaced, a former friend of Lisa's, and with it a tangled history of camaraderie turned bitter. Jennings learned that Anna had once been Lisa's confidant, but their friendship had soured following a dramatic fallout over a personal betrayal rooted in rumors and jealousy that had marred their relationship for good. The more Jennings delved into Anna's past, the clearer the picture became. Estranged from not just Lisa, but also the community, Anna had disappeared into obscurity following their split. Yet Jennings also uncovered a pattern of volatility that seemed to shadow Anna's life, a history of anger management issues and erratic behavior, documented by social media exchanges that highlighted a fierce competitive streak. The investigation provided a renewed urgency as Jennings prepared to track down Anna Miles. She headed to the last known address, a small apartment located on the outskirts of Harrison Lane. The journey there felt heavy with anticipation, the kind that electrifies the air before a storm. When she arrived, wisps of unease curled in her gut as she surveyed the untidy exterior, a faded welcome mat, chipped paint, and the faint sounds of a TV blaring from inside, leaving an impression that life continued unabated in defiance of chaos. Knocking with purpose, Jennings heard footsteps shuffle toward the door. When it swung open, Anna stood there, eyes wide with surprise and an air of tension that was decidedly palpable. The conversation began on hesitant terms, cautious as Jennings probed into Anna's connection with Lisa. I haven't spoken to her in ages, Anna replied too quickly, her voice laced with defensiveness. Yet there was a flicker of something in her eyes that made Jennings uneasy. Was it anger or something more profound? But this was more than just a conversation. It was a chess match unfolding in real time. As Jennings pushed further, she detected something amiss. Anna's responses became increasingly erratic, veering from dismissive laughter about their past arguments to fleeting, defensive statements that indicated buried fury. Each word chiseled into the mounting facade of innocence she desperately clung. The meeting concluded inconclusively, but Jennings left with a lingering impression. Anna was far from a mere bystander. The intensity of their exchange resonated in Jennings' thoughts as she drove back, each word echoing through her mind. The specter of suspicion now hung heavily over Anna Miles, her past entwined with Lisa's final days and concealed beneath layers of bitterness and resentment. With a potential suspect emerging from the shadows, Jennings knew the investigation was about to take a decisive turn. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with an undercurrent of tension as Detective Jennings took her seat among the spectators, an audience of gathered family and friends united by grief and anticipation. Sunlight filtered through the barred windows, casting stripes of light across polished wooden tables, while whispering amongst dark silence. Today marked the beginning of the trial against Anna Miles, an occasion echoing with the weight of a community's collective heartache. When the judge entered, the hushed crowd rumbled with quiet reverence, all eyes fixed on the solemn proceeding. Jennings watched closely as Anna, clad in a crisp blouse with her hair neatly pulled back, presented an unsettling dichotomy of calmness and remorse. A jury of 12 civilians bound by shared obligations sat before her, their expressions inscrutable. Each silently bore the weight of Lisa Montgomery's fate upon their shoulders. The prosecution began methodically, laying out the evidence. They presented the series of confrontational messages exchanged between Lisa and Anna, snippets of words layered with jealousy and emotion that painted a picture of a toxic relationship. Flashing images of the final moments a witness report from the park, the emotional words of friends revealing the shadow lurking behind their smiles through gasps and murmurs from the audience, sending chill waves through Jennings. On the stand, Anna struggled to maintain her composure, her denial slipping beneath the scrutiny of the prosecution's relentless questioning. "It was just a misunderstanding. I never would have hurt Lisa," she insisted, her voice rising in pitch, growing more frantic with each passing moment. Yet the focus swiftly shifted when the defense attempted to unveil a more ingeniously human narrative, presenting Anna as a lost soul, awash in sorrow and grief. They painted her as a victim in the volatile relationship gone awry, twisting the story to reflect the harsh realities of betrayal. After a grueling week of testimony, fear and hope collided in Jennings' chest as she listened to the voice of one of Lisa's close friends recount a heart-wrenching memory, a simple moment divulging that Lisa had expressed fear for her safety just days prior. She felt like she was suffocating, the friend shared, her voice trembling with emotion. As the trial reached its crescendo, Jennings found herself grappling with a cacophony of emotions. She had pioneered this investigation, traversed through the darkness to seek justice. But now she felt the uncertainty of the jury's decision hovering over the room like a storm cloud. But would it dispel in thunder or sprinkle hope? Finally, the jury retired to deliberate, and as Jennings held her breath alongside the audience, a mixture of dread and anticipation surged within her, intertwining with the hopes of those who loved Lisa. The deliberation created a heavy silence that filled the room as time stretched on. Jennings knew the verdict would resonate far beyond the courtroom wall. It would ripple through the community, against the backdrop of a life unjustly cut short, manifesting in the hearts of those who had carried the pain for far too long. The aftermath. The verdict reverberated through the courtroom like the final shattering note of a haunting melody. We find the defendant, Anna Miles, guilty of second-degree murder. The words spoken by the foreman hung heavily in the air. Gasps broke the silence, merging shock with muted sobs as the reality rippled through Lisa's family and friends, a testament to both triumph and loss. Yet Jennings, seated at the back, felt the weight of it all settle around her, amplifying the heavy silence that ensued. As the gavel struck, marking the formal conclusion of the trial, her gaze fell upon Anna, who now struggled to maintain her composure, tears pooling in her eyes, a mask of disbelief masking deeper complexities. An unknowable space now lingered, the space between justice and retribution. Jennings knew that for many present, this verdict brought little solace. Lisa Montgomery's life could never be returned. In the weeks that followed, the commotion of the trial slowly faded into the background, replaced by an awareness of newfound emptiness. Detective Jennings returned to her routine, but the fresh scars of the case lingered like ghosts, shadows that remained etched in her mind. The faces of Lisa's daughters haunted her dreams, their innocent laughter now precious reminders of what had been stolen. The community, too, bore the scars of loss. Memorials sprang up in Lisa's honor, candlelight vigils held in soft remembrance. Neighbors who once exchanged pleasantries found themselves grappling with what it meant to know tragedy, so intimately a shared mourning, binding them together in unexpected ways. Streets once filled with the joy of children playing now echoed with hushed whispers, the specter of fear infiltrating the places that had once felt safe. As Jennings pulled her car into her driveway one evening, the weight of her own responsibilities settled heavy on her chest. The case had been a maddening journey, filled with threads of despair and hope that now intertwined in her spirit. Yet, just as she surveyed the quiet of her surroundings, she felt a stirring within her, a flicker of commitment to share Lisa's story, not just as a detective seeking justice, but as a voice for those who had faltered under the whispers of despair. Days turned into weeks, and she began collaborating with local organizations focusing on mental health awareness and advocacy. Sharing Lisa's story became a profound mission, each retelling an anchor, a bridge toward healing, both for herself and the community inching its way toward recovery. It would take time to mend the wounds left behind, but Jennings understood that as long as stories were told, the echoes of those lost could still resonate within the hearts of those who remain. Justice had been served, but the aftermath was a landscape still raw with emotion, a reminder that healing often began with remembrance, with voices weaving a tapestry of hope beyond horror. And in that hope, she found her purpose. Reflection. Sitting in her office, Detective Jennings reflected on the intricate tapestry of life, loss, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The case of Lisa Montgomery had transformed her, weaving its threads into the fabric of her being. Each day brought moments of contemplation, images of Lisa's laughter shared with friends, the simple yet poignant joys, memories now tinged with. She recognized that while justice had been served, the journey had carved deeper scars, shadows lingering in the corners of her mind. It had been months since the trial's conclusion, yet stories of loss and resilience continued to surface in the community. Conversations unfolded that had once remained bound beneath the weight of secrecy, unearthing shared pain and empowering dialogue about mental health. Jennings felt a profound responsibility to foster these narratives, to stand witness to the stories untold and souls forgotten. As she engaged more deeply with advocacy work, a sense of purpose blossomed within her. She realized that true resolution lay not just in courtroom victories, but in dismantling the silence surrounding mental health struggles, empowering individuals to seek help, and nurturing connections forged through shared experience. The journey was far from over, but Jennings felt a glimmer of hope, a collective movement transforming grief into action, curiosity into compassion. The echoes of Lisa Montgomery's story would resonate long after, a reminder that in the intertwining threads of life, no voice should ever remain unheard.